Welcome to Titan Table Talk. I'm your host, Eric Bowman. Joining us is men's track coach Todd Lowder. Todd, thanks for joining us. A new studio today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little track, but before we get there, let's get our listeners. You're in your second year here at Illinois Wesleyan as the head coach, and a few years before that, you've been involved. Give us a little background in what you've done as far as track and coaching and helping out.
Sure. Been a track junkie my whole life. Former track and field athlete. Went to Christopher Newport University. Found my way to the Midwest and started a business here. Roughly 29 years ago at this point. But through that, always had the passion for speed, helping kids get faster. So trained a lot of adults through those years with Fitness Quest, which is my company. Finally had the opportunity I had built quite a youth track and field program here with Central Illinois Track Club, which has got a home now here at Illinois Wesleyan. We have roughly 150 athletes a year that run a summer circuit and a very abbreviated indoor circuit. Great place to build a foundation for young people, teach them how to embrace challenges, set goals, and be resilient. So it was a natural when I started helping out here, and lo and behold, the path took a turn when a full-time position came open, and I got to follow my passion and have pretty much sold out of all the Fitness Quest sides of things other than the track club and just a few people I've worked with for 20 plus years.
Track can have many different disciplines in it. You've got throwing, you've got jumping, you've got sprinters, you've got distance, you've got middle distance and all that. What is the part that attracted you as an athlete, first of all? What area was your specialty when you ran?
Well, so like so many young athletes, I started as a sprinter, and as my body matured and your skills tend to reveal themselves, found myself as more of a quarter miler. Since then, though, I've always loved everything really from the quarter mile down. I have a fondness for the 400 because I think it's a challenge that very few people embrace, but love sprints and love trying to solve that riddle of what each individual athlete brings to the table and how we maximize those gifts they've been given.
Now, I've dabbed a little bit in coaching track at the junior high level, so not too in depth in that. And I always hear coaches out there saying, "Run faster, jump higher, throw farther." Okay, I know there's a lot more to coaching track than that. What are some of the things you work on with your athletes?
Well, that's a great question. We can get as deep into the weeds as we want with that, but some great wisdom that I was given by a colleague of mine was I had called him and I had tons of technical questions, and he had a lot of experience, and he said, whoa, Todd, you've got all the right questions and you're on the right track with all those things, but here's the deal. If your kids don't step up to the line and think they can win, you got no chance. So, yes, we dig into all those things, but I tell you the thing that I love the most is getting an athlete as a freshman in college who's not sure they even belong here. And by the time, and maybe it's a freshman in college, maybe it's a freshman in high school, whatever, but by the time we're done with them, they believe in themselves. And that permeates every aspect of their life well beyond the track. And that's, I think, is what always drew me back to track, is the things that were given to me by great coaches like that.
Well, we talked a little bit before we started recording about that drive, that want to win, and looking at that person next to you. And I think of the movie Seabiscuit, where the horse Seabiscuit kind of looks to his side and says, "Hey, I'm going to outrun you." And that's something that you're instilling in your athletes.
Exactly, getting them to realize the gifts that they have within them that were there all along, but they never knew it. So once they begin to believe in themselves, again, that takes over every part of their life, no matter whether it's walking into a boardroom, a courtroom, heck, if they're in the arts and entertainment, onto a set, they believe that they belong there.
Well, let's talk about some of those athletes who have that belief or are working on that belief. Who are some of the ones to keep an eye on this year?
Well, we've got an incredibly young crew that has come in. And really, it's beginning to break down where they're at and what we need to do with them. So, Jordan Griffin on the women's side is somebody I was familiar with even before she got here. She's already showing incredible promise. On the other end of the spectrum, Christian Gastos, one of our pole vaulters on the men's side, senior, had an incredible summer. We had some great conversations at the end of last year. He took them to heart, went home, and came back really a different young man, and that's already begun to show. Seth Hammerski, an 800 runner, has come in. Had a good, solid cross-country season. Let me think. Jacob Tackett, Monticello, Central Illinois young man, doing a great job. Constant progression. I think he's somebody to keep your eye on. He's going to have a great freshman year, but I think he's going to have an even better sophomore, junior year. Jahari Scott came to us from the football side of things, has really lit up the CCIW and the long jump. And I think people are going to start to take notice of him with his sprint abilities too as we move into the outdoor. There's so many that I could keep going, but those are a few that come to mind right away.
Well, those are a couple that we'll keep an eye on. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on the whole team. You mentioned the long jump. What are some of the things there? Because obviously you're not running next to somebody when you're long jumping. So what mentality do you work on about jumping further and getting that mindset?
The long jump, Coach Schumacher does an incredible job with our jumpers. Consistency on the runway and how much speed and energy we can carry into that board. And then it's mechanics in the air, landing. It's a very technical event, but one of Jahari's biggest assets is the amount of speed and energy he brings into the board. Probably our number 260 runner right now, and I could see him being in the top 3 or 4 in the conference in the 100 when we get outdoors, and that's primarily what he's been able to lean on to this point. But our job is going to be to help him with the other more technical aspects off the board and his landing and his mechanics in the air. That I think his upside is much greater than a lot of people will anticipate.
Well, I always enjoy listening to or watching the jumpers in the air and the way they're like running in the air and still going on that. That just amazes me. Talking about track meets, right now we're in the indoor season. You've had a couple meets, just went to Dubuque, Iowa this past weekend, but then you have a couple meets coming up here at the Shirk Center. What's it like to have such a great indoor facility here?
Oh, it's an incredible advantage for us, for our athletes to not have to be on a bus for 2 to 3 hours. Prior to a meet, as you mentioned, we were in Dubuque. That was 3 hours on a bus. They get off, you've got to try to get them warm, worked out, get the kinks. And we had a couple that we had to pull because it's a time of the season where it doesn't make sense to take risks. But I would guess that some of that was you're up at 6 a.m., you're on a bus for 3 hours, you get off the bus, you got to get warm, you got to figure out how to find that. Now, that's part of being a collegiate athlete. But for, as I mentioned, a young team, there's a little bit of learning curve to that. So having the Shirk Center is an incredible blessing to an institution this size, to a team, to be able to train in every day. But as you mentioned, we've got really 4 weeks coming up right here at home. So familiar food, familiar bed, familiar surroundings, incredible advantage for our athletes.
Yeah, that 4th week is the 2-day CCIW Indoor Championships, and then after that, it's possibly a trip with Carthage and Wartburg. We'll see where that's at, and then down to Birmingham, Alabama, where usually it's warm, but you still get to run indoors.
That's right.
So that's got to be exciting to be gearing up for that. What's one of the things so far in your short career as head coach with Illinois Wesleyan that you look back on and say, man, if we can duplicate that every year, that's going to be awesome?
Well, this year we were really blessed to have one heck of a recruiting class come in on the men's side. And, as a head coach, you're always looking at trying to reload as athletes move on and graduate. So I think we're 1 to 2 more seasons away from having a very similar recruiting class come in and being able to be a top contender in the CCIW. As you know, we were 8th last year in the indoor CCIW. I think I'm not going to make any predictions, but we're going to surprise a lot of people this year with the crew we've got. So that's as big as anything right now.
Well, for those high school athletes who are out there listening to this, besides obviously fast times and long jumps and high jumps and the numbers, what else do you look for in a recruit?
Oh, wow. Great question. Well, I think anybody who's familiar with Illinois Wesleyan and in the academic reputation that we have is obviously we're looking for great students. We're looking for good teammates. Our culture this year, we spent a lot of time in the fall talking about 3 things as a team. What was our purpose? And each individual comes, I had meetings with all of my guys. What is your purpose? Purpose meaning, what do you intend to accomplish this year? But we had each of those guys give me that and made them understand that that purpose contributed to a larger purpose of our team, and that was the leap we were going to make, who we were going to be. Taking pride in that IW on your chest. We talked a lot about the history of Illinois Wesleyan track and field. I had a few of the former athletes come in and speak and what it meant to them to be Titans and how they look back and some of their, like you asked me, some of their greatest memories that gave our young men some context of what they were a part of. But I also stressed to them that pride also has to do with how are you inspiring the young people that look up to you. I think sometimes athletes think, oh, this is just Division III track and field. This is collegiate track and field. This is less than 6% of those that participate in high school track and field. You are, whether you think so or not, an elite crew. And I always jokingly tell this story. My daughter, when I started doing this, took on a love for women's basketball. She's not a basketball player. She's a swimmer and a track athlete. So we went to almost every game last year. And at one point she said, hey, Dad, do you ever get to see those girls? And I said, honey, they're just students. They're just like you're going to be one day. So the point for me in that moment and sharing that with them is there's always somebody out there watching you. Present yourself well. And then the last thing was be prepared. I told them, I can't prepare you unless you're present every day. And I mean present. I mean here with a purpose, here with the pride of who you represent. So culture is a big thing for us, and we're looking for people who are going to contribute to that culture, not take away from that culture.
Well, in track and field, golf probably fits in the same category also. It doesn't matter if you're D1, D2, D3, NAIA. It does not matter if you're fast or jump far or jump high. Olympic trials and all of that, that's all reachable. That's all very well to do. And I know people when I was in college, NAIA, that made the Olympic trials in pole vault, in women's sprinting, things like that. So definitely it sounds like you've got a couple who might be on that way.
I think we have some that are going to, at the national level, open some eyes over the next 3 to 4 years.
So, well, Coach, we appreciate you coming in, chatting with us, and run fast, jump farther, throw farther, jump higher, whatever those are, and we know things will be great with you.
Great. Thanks for having me, and we're excited to finish this thing out.
That is Coach Todd Lowder of Men's Track. You are watching and listening to Titan Table Talk.